is Nan Tynberg of the Palm Springs Public Library's Local History Project. I am here today with a wonderful, energetic lady, Hazel Critchlow. Since Hazel made her home here in the desert some 50 years ago, she has known many Palm Springs people and has been involved in many interesting aspects of the city. We are in Palm Springs, and today's date is the 25th of March, 1987. Hazel, we're going to have a lot of fun with this. We're going to be very relaxed, and we're just going to talk about the early days in Palm Springs. You first came on your honeymoon, is that correct?
1931.
In 1931, and what made you come to Palm Springs for your honeymoon?
I just loved warm weather, and I wanted to come down here for the honeymoon, and then we went on to the Caliente Hotel in Tijuana for the other days. But I just loved the desert, and I had heard a lot about it. We stayed at the Del Taquis Hotel.
Oh, you did stay at the Del Taquis?
Yes, and we sat out on the balcony and watched the moonlight. It was a gorgeous night, and we just had a wonderful honeymoon.
Now, describe your background, where you were from.
Oh,
originally.
I came from Belvedere, Illinois many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to, my father came out probably 5 times, and he brought a freight car with his horses. We had Morgan horses back there because he was a livery stable man and had the place for 20 years. And he brought the horses out and back 2 or 3 times. And then we lived on a ranch in Lancashire, and we had all kinds of 40 acres ranch. And I was a little tiny person, but we had to help my dad. We had to pick up fruit, and
you're still very strong and energetic.
And we had
right
to pull
now.
suckers on corn that was growing and all kinds.
This was back in Illinois.
No, this is out in Lancashire.
When you moved to a ranch in
yes,
California.
Yes, in Lancashire.
I see. And where were you living when you got married?
I was living on 54th Street, where my dad had built a couple of houses when we first came out. And my grandmother, his mother, owned 3 just a little ways away, and he wanted to be near her. And his father, too. And they lived on 54th. But when I was a baby, my mother said some man just wanted to grab me and have me sit on his lap, and she said, "Oh no, sir, you're all dressed up, you look so fancy. I wouldn't want you to take her and take a chance." And he did, because everybody said I had eyes as big as a saucer. And the man took me, and I vomited on him.
Oh!
And my mother was so upset she couldn't see straight.
That was the beginning of feisty Hazel Critchlow, right?
That was the beginning.
They should have known about
you.
I
think my mother did.
Well, your husband, your first husband, was a local sports hero.
Yes, he was born
what was his
California,
name? Mm-hmm.
Milton Lewis Redfern.
Mm-hmm.
And we had gone together all through high school. And I was 2 years older than he was, so he graduated a year later and had a scholarship to go to university. And he kind of wanted to get married, and I said, that would be silly when you can go to university. So he pledged Sigma Chi fraternity at USC, and then he had lived in Arizona, and he loved desert too.
Mm-hmm.
So he talked with his folks about it, and they said it was all right, go down there if he wanted. So he went to the University of Arizona. He played some football with both of the universities, and basketball. He was all Southern, all state. In high school,
yes,
Manual Arts is where we went to school, a very large school, high school.
So you were high school sweethearts,
yes,
and you came to Palm Springs on your honeymoon.
We came to Palm Springs.
You described the nights, the beautiful nights, and do you remember anything else in 1931 about the area?
Oh, it just didn't seem like there was hardly anything. I do know the post office was down next to Lincoln's store.
Sure.
And, few things, and the Desert Inn, of course, was just a small place right up next to the street.
How did you know about the Del Taquis? Was that a famous hotel
I can't remember.
Or you just
I can't remember. I am quite sure that we had a reservation, but I can't remember how we did that.
Let me bring you 5 years later. You came back to Palm Springs under very different circumstances.
That's right.
And your husband died very untimely.
He was sick just overnight. He had gotten a real good job and with the state of California. He didn't stay at the university. He was only there 2 years, I think.
I see.
And then he got this big job through an agency that I knew. They called and said, Mr. McKinney from San Francisco wants a university man or nothing else for the State Compensation Insurance Fund, PG McKinney. So he hired Milt right off the bat.
Yes. Well, you were a very young widow when you came to Palm Springs again in
32.
Right, in 1936. And where did you live when you first moved here, and how did your family feel about your moving here?
Oh, they didn't care. My dad and mother thought it was wonderful too. I forgot to tell you that my husband loved my folks as much as he did his own. He said he wished someday we might all be able to live in the same place, but they came down. He invited them down the night that we were at the Del Taquits. They came the next day, and we went on a little picnic before we left for Tijuana.
Goodness. Well, he must have loved them very much, so they were part of your honeymoon.
He absolutely loved them.
So you, for sentimental reasons, you moved back in 1936.
Oh, yes. Well, the reason I really came down was because my father had heard over the radio where he was having lunch one day at a restaurant that anyone that didn't have children and no obligations must go to work. And I said, well, believe me, if I'm going to have to work, I want to be in Palm Springs. And my dad had built a small trailer that was very lightweight, one that I pulled later up to Yosemite some of the times in the summer. But I lived in a little trailer in the trailer village, and because I had to go to work was the reason I went to the El Mirador.
I see. Now you lived on Section 14 when you first moved.
I lived what?
On Section 14 when you first moved.
No, that wasn't the first. I lived in what was the trailer village. Well, that's Section 14, all Indian land, yes.
It was.
Yes, I lived in the trailer village.
You described to me some of the common laundry facilities that...
Yes, there was a laundry, and we had a well-known Indian girl. I used to know her name. I loved her. She did the cleaning and did a wonderful job on the restrooms. Not very many trailers at that time had restrooms.
Right.
I mean, bathrooms.
Sure.
And we all went over there to take our showers and do our wash, and she kept it just Jessie, an Indian lady that everyone in town knew, and she had quite a family but worked all the time to make money. She wasn't one of the regular tribe of Kauai.
Agua
Calientes, yeah. But I sure did like her, and there were plenty of trailers as I remember it. I think Jack Morrow, the minister, who was later over here at Foursquare Church on the Sunrise, that was years later.
Where exactly would this have been located?
It was where the big new hotel now, is it Marquis?
Oh, the Marquis, yes.
Is that the one, the pink one?
Yes.
Right by the plaza.
Exactly.
And the bus depot was right across the street from the trailer village.
Yes.
We used to see the buses come in. And
now, you were a community of people. Obviously, you probably were very close to your neighbors at the time.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember anybody in particular? You mentioned
the names of people?
Yes, at that time. You mentioned Mary Lou
Oh, Mary Lou Stewart.
And how did you know her?
But she didn't come until 2 years later, I believe she says, or something a little bit later. But I did go to Hatchett's Market to buy small things. I forget just how that was, but I know Hatchett's was on the corner.
Right.
And that was Viola Ortner's
father.
She was Viola Hollinger.
Yes,
Hollinger.
Exactly.
Yes, then.
Yes.
And then...
Yes.
Well, she's had three names. I can't think of all of them. Yeah.
Yes.
She was a Hatchet girl, I believe.
Exactly.
That's what I think.
What else do you remember about those days? Before you started actually working, what was your typical day like? when you left the trailer park in the morning? You were always an energetic hiker
like
and walker?
Almost every morning I walked to the Indian cemetery. They had a place out there where they held the wakes. I can hardly remember that, a funny old building, but that was where they held wakes, and I could hear them occasionally at night. I would hear just slight noise, but I loved going out there, and
what did it look like? Was it open desert at the time?
It was just open desert.
Were there flowers?
But yes, they kept artificial flowers, and it was, you could easily see it was a cemetery, and all the Indians were being buried there. And Aileen, my friend, told me later, I know, they always burn all the one who passes. They burn all the clothing. That's a belief they have, that they have to do.
Interesting, yeah.
So I know they do that.
You were interested in the Indian lore even before, and we'll get into this later, your friendship with the Indians, but you were...
No, I wasn't really acquainted with Aileen right then.
Right.
I didn't get acquainted with her until later. I think that Bill Vythe, who was the Indian agent right on Indian Avenue, and I used to pass there going to work, walking. I think I walked quite a bit later to work, but I met Aileen later because she was employed then at the spa, or at the little Indian bath.
Right, we'll talk about that. Oh. And those early days too, you mentioned that you knew Rose McKinney.
Oh yes.
How did you know Rose McKinney?
Well, that was later on, and that was because I had bought an interest. Bill Vythe had gotten me an interest through a Jewish man named Leopold Kalish and Fanny Kalish. They had bought the park on Ramon Road, the oldest, next to the trailer village, I believe, the oldest of the trailer parks. And that's where I met Mary Lou, through them coming down and staying in that. She said that her neighbors, her mother's neighbors, had colored people working for them, and it was quite nice along the front on Ramon then.
Yes. Did you know Johnny? You mentioned Johnny Miller as well. Did you know him through
Johnny Miller?
Real estate? Or
Johnny Miller?
Yes.
Oh no, I knew him through the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, okay.
He was an officer of the Chamber, and that was later.
That was later, yes, yes, indeed. Any memorable neighbors other than the people we've mentioned?
Well, Jack Morrow was my neighbor, lived right across from me in the trailer park, and he was not married then. He married quite soon afterward and brought his wife down there, and of course they're historical in town because he built this big church right over here on Sunrise and was very successful, but now he's in no, I heard just recently that he's someplace else. He went to Albuquerque, I know, and thought he was retiring, and someone got a hold of him, and but I didn't go to his church at that time, only off and on. I went to community church when quite near the first, when I got down here, and I was a member of community for 25 years.
You were an early member then of the community. You were an early member of the community church. Do you remember who the minister was at the time?
Well, I'll tell you, I knew, but I can't think of it. But Clara Vythe and Bill know the name, and I don't remember. I know him quite well. He lisped. He was a real nice man.
You knew, Dr.
Blackstone.
Oh, yes.
Dr. Blackstone, yes, I know well. And I have, well, in fact, he married Johnny and me, my second husband. But
I'm sorry. You knew Vi Watson?
Yes, I don't know her real well, but I know she was the soloist in the church all those years. We know each other to speak, and she lives in units over right here, 1 block from me.
That's
with the managers of the Plaza Trailer Village at that time were Bill and B. Whitfield, William T. Whitfield, who was later a real wonderful builder. People like to buy his stuff. There's still units, quite big places, and Vi Watson lives in there, but he passed away way long ago, and B is still alive.
Do you remember anything else about those early days living in the trailer park? You more or less just got used to living in the desert, and you took your morning walks, and I suppose, did you have to shop daily for food, or could you get enough? Did you have refrigerator?
Oh, sure, I had a refrigerator. And I stayed year-round for 25 years at least. Now, of course...
What did you do in the summers when you...
Well, I don't know, only it was just fun. You don't wear hardly anything. I had a bikini and you could see most everything. And I really think I just wasted my time visiting, that's all.
A lot of seeing people and walking.
And I went up every night, I think, early evening to... Now, who used to... He owned... always ran, he's run for office twice, and I like him real well. Used to run the pinball place down next to the bowling alley, and I stopped in there a lot. And
what did you do for fun? Do you remember going to, I know you like the movies, do you remember going to, at that time, Francis Stevens School, Earl Strebe would be showing the movies at Francis Stevens School.
No, I did not go there.
Do you remember going to dances there, or socials, or
no.
Just visiting people? Did you exchange? Did you have dinners, potluck dinners, anything like that, or?
At Francis Stevens School, I went to quite a few benefits of schools. I'm sure I did go to potlucks, but I can't remember. Of course, a lot of it was church. I mean, they, in the old building that still sitting there.
Sure.
I was not a member when it was on Palm Canyon, but I know it was down right fairly near Lickens.
Right.
I really don't remember too much.
That's
I'm going to be 84, you know.
I know. No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. Someone you do know very well, and you can give us a lot of good information, is about some very prominent Indian families who are very important to Palm Springs, namely Aileen Miguel and her family.
Yes.
How did you first meet Aileen?
Well, I think I met her while she was still wearing white uniforms and working at the old Indian baths.
That's
just
wonderful.
A
what
river
did she
or
do?
a pool.
Sure.
It was a pool. I went there one day and stayed too long. Thought I was catching cold, and I got sick. And a lady that lived in Palm Springs did live in Palm Springs as long as I had. Jean Bourne, B-O-U-R-N-E, Barney Bourne from the Desert Inn Barber Shop. Later had his own over here in Ramon and Sunrise, but I knew Jean real well before she married Barney, and I think that I had talked with Aileen, I believe. The Indian agent was right there in a building. I can't remember how that was. I can't remember the name of the Indian agent, but I knew he and his wife real well, and I knew the later one, I believe, was Bill Veith. I knew them. But I didn't know Aileen real well until I bought the 3 houses way later on Indian land. I was still living in the Trailer Village.
Right.
Benny Morris, I've tried to think of that name.
Good
Benny Morris, an old timer, and his wife, I knew her real well, but I can't think of her name either. They were real nice people, and he, I believe, was employed at the hospital. I don't know, I'm so mixed up with old age, but anyway, then of course I had a lease through the Indian agent, and I knew Aileen well from then on.
You mentioned the Indian baths, and I think that's, did you go there every day?
Oh no, no, but I went, it was loads of fun. It was just, as I remember, it didn't hardly cost anything.
25 cents we were told.
Yeah, I think so, and I loved the hot baths. But I can't remember too much. I wish I wasn't so old.
Oh, you're doing fine. Now, interesting, and we'll look at a photograph later. You were a very venturesome lady, and you bought 3 houses on Indian land, and
from Benny Morris and his wife.
And you eventually moved into one of. You lived in a trailer on that property, is that correct? Or did you live in one of the houses for a while?
I lived in the trailer first, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure.
That's all right.
It was a cottage home by then.
Yes.
Not the one that
Of
I
course.
gave you the picture
Right.
of, that old one. But I know I lived in the front, I think, first, and then someone who was living in one of the ones in the back. But my father and
You said
that was 9 years later.
yes. You said that you bought the property or the house for $4,000.
Yes.
The whole.
Oh, we don't buy the land. That's
Yes.
why I've had to move
course.
them out to the east end
Right.
of town.
I think that's an
But
interesting
I
story.
was married at that time. This is 9 years after I lived in the trailer park.
I see.
And because I was
let's-
a widow for 9 years.
Yes. Let's talk about. Interesting that you moved the houses, or you had help moving
Yes,
the
Leonard.
houses.
No, Millard Wright was the house mover that everyone used, and I.
You just moved the houses.
Well, it was just starting where people were having to. I got a notice because I was there quite a while. I'm afraid I'll get all mixed up on dates.
Don't
But
worry about it. This
I
would
was
be
there
late 40s.
several years.
Yeah.
But I know I was married when I bought them, and my father and Johnny Critchlow.
You talked about Otto Grilson.
What?
Otto Grilson, the plumber. Otto.
Oh,
Grilson.
Otto Grelson.
Grauson.
Yes, he and his wife. They're still here and live in this.
And they helped you move, or did they do the?
Oh no,
Oh.
no, they were the plumber. He was the plumber that did the three houses. I had bought a little bit before that a real reasonable lot out at the corner of Corral and Rancho Vista, out just off of Date Palm. And then the wind was something terrible out there and nothing to stop it, and I'd taken out little bunches of oleanders, and I worked my head off and had help putting in a row of oleanders to shield the houses, and I had him place them so they all faced the front corral, which was north, and that's where the wind came from. And I had all three houses moved,
That's it.
and I had 2 septic tanks
interesting.
and 2 cesspools put in because I wanted to be sure of being safe, that one would flow into the other and I'd never have any trouble. I spent a lot of money. I didn't hardly come out on that deal, really. I sold them for 18 and just...
I know, but you had a
just-
lot of fun doing it.
Yes, I did, but I worked real hard.
It's hard work.
But the man that recently sold the same 3, and they're still there, was $85,000.
Mm-hmm. That's just shows
So I
you what,
sold cheap enough, but I rented until I got sick of renters. And
shows you how times have changed. But that is fascinating. The fact
now
that
there
people
isn't
move.
any sand, and there's loads of new places
Oh,
right
yes.
near mine, and
Oh, sure.
oh, it's
Oh,
so
yes.
different.
Let's talk a little bit more about the Miguels. You had not only gotten to know Aileen, but you knew Richard. Richard, her husband, and
sure.
her mother. Who
Richard told Aileen once that I'm the only one that calls for her that ever talks to him. And I love Richard, and he loves prunes. Aileen told me Richard just loves cooked prunes. So after a couple of favors at different times, I've cooked a whole package of prunes. They get rid of them in no time, she said.
That's great.
But he loves prunes.
Have you been involved in their parties and
Oh,
ceremonies? and-
mercy, yes. Everything that ever came up, Aileen would offer her home. Now, we haven't gotten to the Chamber of Commerce or
No,
the BPW or anything.
Well, we'll talk about that, but I am interested
I've
in...
known Aileen a long time, but it was mostly while I was her tenant on the Indian land, and I
see.
only paid $10 a month rent. That's how the poor Indians had to get started. And then, of course, it was raised later, but never to anything
Yes.
that amounted to much.
Did you ever go to a ceremony, to a party or a ceremony or a meeting that
No.
they've held?
No.
You did talk about their headquarters, though. Their
Well, you mean the new building, the tribal building?
Yes.
Yes, see, that wasn't built for some time.
I see.
I haven't any idea what year,
Yes.
but I do know that I went out at the time they were getting their silver and dishes and setting up the tribal building. I was there for different things, and then they were, Aileen was not the chairman then, but she was the chairman not too long after, and we were permitted to use the tribal building for our business and professional women's
Yes,
club when
we will
finally
talk
we got
about
organized.
Were you close with, and I know you know, Eileen's sister is Corinne
Oh,
Siva.
I know Corinne Siva and
Yes,
Tom.
what is she
Siva.
like? Yes.
What is she like? The most darling person. We aren't really thick friends,
Right.
but believe me, I went to their bake sale at the Catholic Church not too long ago, and she even spoke up for me. I was buying a great big cake and some things I didn't really need, and she says, "You can have this for $1 less."
Aw.
I love Corinne is her name, but Corinne, but her name for the family is Tween, and I have called her Tween, but I want to try to
Interesting.
get to call.
Does that
She-
mean anything?
I don't know. I don't know,
Yes.
but that was.
Do they ever talk about their past, about their ancestry, or their? We have heard that they don't talk too much about their forebears, about the grandparents and the people that
Well,
came
they
before them.
certainly are closely knit with. I mean, Aileen did attend wakes. Now she attends funerals of all kinds of Indians that I don't know anything about them, but Paula, down toward San Diego is where they go to quite a few, and she has a very close friend down there that
Are they members of the family, or are they of the same
No.
general tribe?
they're not always the same tribe.
And that's interesting.
But I just know that she is attending funerals, and they all do, I think.
Yes, interesting.
But I'm not sure.
And
I
they're
went-
very family.
They're family-minded,
and-
yes. And Aileen, of course, is just a grandmother to a lot of them now.
Yes.
She's a
Tell me about I know you're very proud of the Business and Professional Women's Organization that you really spearheaded.
Yes,
you
I
and
organized
Aileen
it.
organized. That would have been in the 40s as well.
I guess so, when I was
Yes.
working for the Chambers when I did it.
And that was quite a remarkable achievement.
Well, it had the largest charter membership that they'd ever known. They
Wonderful.
told me 52 charter members, but I worked on the Indians and I worked on everybody else that I knew.
It's wonderful, wonderful.
But
You're to be congratulated.
I
Yes.
didn't want to be the first president, and I wouldn't be because I just had been too busy always to be that. But they wanted me to. They just do you that honor if you'll take it, and I can't even remember who took it. That's too bad, isn't it?
I'm sure you were very involved.
Could have been
From
a
the beginning.
Well, yes, they were. Of course, it's a national organization, and they
Yes,
had
but there was not
contacted
a
me
chapter here.
from
Yes.
Indio, I believe, to start a Palm Springs while I was at the desk in the front at the chamber.
Talk to me a little bit about working at the chamber.
I don't know the years of anything.
Well, it would have been in the 40s. You said that, early 40s, you said that Bill Dunkerley was the...
William Dunkerley.
William
yes.
Dunkerley was the manager. How would you describe him?
Oh, a wonderful man. I liked him very much. And I was, at that time, they kept the chamber open in the evening. And, of course, I was here in the summer, too. I remember the door always being open. I think that's the way a chamber building should be. If the weather permits, it should be open. But it was open, and, of course, quite a bit of traffic by that time going to the Chi-Chi next door. And the Chi-Chi had, what do you call them, jazz sessions?
Sure,
or
jam sessions.
Jam
yes.
sessions. And I could hear it in the chamber whenever they had music, it bang, 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 because we were in an office right next door to Chi-Chi. I'm sure our walls must have touched each other.
And that was on Palm Canyon.
Yes, on Palm
right
Canyon.
on Palm Canyon.
And I remember one night I was not working and I was in Chi-Chi's eating with someone, I don't know what, and a funny looking character with long hair, and there was not many of those at that time, came in, and all the waiters went kind of loosey-doozy. They were trying to do so much for him, and a real cute looking blonde, and I motioned to one of the waiters to come over, and I said, tell me who is, I was with someone, I don't know what that was all about, but I said, tell me who this is that you're all making such, standing over there on the steps going down into the blue room, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, none other than, now the end of it's terrible, Howard Hughes.
My goodness.
And his girlfriend. They had just flown in there to have dinner and then leaving. But
interesting.
I know they made a big fuss over him.
That was a very popular night spot. I understand
yes.
it had wonderful food as well as good entertainment.
And Irwin Schumann was a wonderful man.
Mm-hmm. He did a lot.
And his wife was more wonderful.
Did a lot for this area.
I knew her real well. One time I was on the jury, and is it all right to get in on this? I was on jury because Hilton McCabe was the judge then, and I had gone to Manual Arts High School and was the vice president of my student body, and Hilton had gone to Hollywood High, and I had known Hilton slightly in Lancashire before it became North Hollywood, way back. So Hilton thought I was a good juror, and I'm sure he put my name in because I was on the, whatever the legal amount was to be on serving. At first I was on a lot, till I had to tell him I was too hard of hearing and I couldn't serve as a good juror anymore. But what'd you ask me first now?
Well, about the Chi-Chi and what it was like, and Irwin Schumann and his wife. Oh yes,
and then Hilton said to me one day, because he knew that I had gone out to lunch with, what was her name? Irwin and could it be Barbara? I don't know.
Virginia
Irwin.
Comes to mind.
I know her really quite well.
Sure.
If I'd see her today, we'd love it. But I was to meet with she and Irwin about a dinner for the bailiff. Can't remember his name, way back. And he was wonderful. Everybody loved him. What was his name? Anyway, I got to go to they said, would I come with them to the Riviera and have dinner? And I remember that they held hands. I don't know how they could eat, but they were holding hands while we had dinner under the table.
Well, he did quite a lot for this area, and he really was
gosh, I know
involved.
Who Barbara. No, it's Sinatra probably.
Well, let's go back to next door. You worked the front desk of the Chamber of Commerce very early in its inception. And
open on Saturdays and Sundays and evenings.
Nights and weekends.
Yes.
And what were your duties at the Chamber?
I was sitting at the front desk on a stool up high, and I could see everyone real easy, and of course the lights on and everything. I was there day and night, but just on weekends I didn't. It was open, but they had the girl already that worked the rest.
Sure.
And I would see lots of people walking by. It seems to me I was quite busy. I was making reservations if anyone wanted to know where to stay. And there were quite a few coming in. That was the main thing, to sell the town. And I remember of asking, I don't know whether it was Bill Dunkerley or whether it was later, Jimmy Cooper, because I did go over to the new building. And I knew that lady and her husband real well, that he built the chamber, but I can't think of them either.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm interested in what kinds of things you told.
Well,
visitors?
They would say...
These were visitors.
They were visitors,
short-term visitors,
yes,
by and large.
short-term. And they would say, well, at night, of course, I probably didn't have too much, just what is there to do, and I knew what was they could do that would be fun, and I can't remember what I would tell them.
What were some of the hotels that would you recommend one hotel over another, or not necessarily?
Well,
did you have
I
to
would
be
try.
fair?
They had to be members of the chamber. If I know they did later. I don't know at first what it was all about. I know there was a Harry Bogart that I think was in the early time, he and his wife. I know her name, but I can't think. But they owned a little hotel kind of way back and off the beat, and they were always tickled if I could get them someone way at the north end. And I did have questions asked me, which end of town some were looking to buy. And I loved that. And they ask me, which area do you like best? And I either asked Bill Dungerley or
Jimmy Cooper.
Yes. What do I say to them when they want to know which end of the town I like best? I say, you know which one I like because it isn't windy in the south end. And the north end really was blowy and nothing to stop the sand, and it was crazy. When we got to the airport, we'd get sand in our hair and our face and everything, just a little old stop off in the sand. But he said, you say there's people that like both sections, that you don't even need to say which you prefer. I get lots of inquiries about both. I don't know. I had to talk equally as fair for the north.
I'm sure the real estate people would be down on the Chamber's head.
I wish I knew the year the tram was built too, because
well, it was eventually built in the 60s, but it was worked on.
Well, that was when I was up in there.
Yeah.
Way back when they were way down in the hole with I think he told me it was a Chevrolet motor. Maybe it was, I don't know. I was taken to the tram by special attention with a neighbor who was on the Indian land right in front of mine, was head of the Carpenters Union. Gosh, I don't know.
You were taken there when it was finally...
By the head of the Carpenters Union, had to go up to inspect, and he took me with him.
How nice.
And showed me the big machinery that was going to run the tram down in a big hole.
Yes, because it was years and years in the making.
I know it. Yes. I know it. Well, this was right early, because they were carrying it up with helicopters.
Sure. That's right. That's right. That's interesting. You mentioned a Bogart, and you knew Frank Bogart and continue to know him very, very well. Did you know him from the early days of the Chamber when he was active as PR person for El Mirador?
Yes, I knew him.
Or
maybe
through real estate.
Maybe it wasn't right when he was at El Mirador. I don't remember that, because I later worked at the El Mirador when Ray Ryan was the owner. I worked in the room service answering the phone. This was before it became a hospital, of course.
Yes, so you were there.
Used to go in that big pool down there.
Very early 40s. What was it like then?
Oh my goodness, it was fancy, even way back. But let me think now.
Well, what was...
I didn't know Frank, I don't believe, then. I can't even remember where I lived then.
That's fine. We'll move along and we'll get to him later. But two people you did know very well were Melba and Frank Bennett.
Well, I knew Melba the best. I didn't know Frank too well, but Melba knew that I was politics crazy, and I still am, donating more than I should, and 15 letters a day, begging for more. But I'm strong Republican, and she was too, and they were owners of a big ranch out on East Highway, Palm Canyon, East Palm Canyon.
Right,
and she asked Frank, I think, she may have talked with me about it too, but anyway, Frank came over in a truck and said we're supposed to go out and get the reservation people to vote. We've got to get them registered and listed. So I remember getting in the truck. I had sort of forgotten it for a long time, and finally, just not too many years ago, I said, Frank, I might have been this year, trying to get everything straight. Maybe for you, I don't know. No, it's been a year, I think. But
You're talking about
me asking
Frank Bogart.
Yes.
Reminding him about when you went with the Bennetts to register.
Yes, I said, Frank, am I dreaming, or didn't you come by and pick me up, right, when I was living in the houses at Eileen's land?
In the 40s.
And he said, you're not just guessing, you're right. sure we went
You
out.
weren't dreaming, yes.
And
you
awful.
did.
The reservation was awful with the outhouses, and oh my
Did
gosh.
Aileen go with you as well?
No, Aileen, I registered, she and Richard, but they're Democrats, and I didn't press it. They, I don't know, I don't think they even voted.
Did you have any luck with the Indians?
I couldn't register. I didn't register personally. I sent someone to
Sure.
their house to register
Sure.
them, if I'm right.
But the other Indians, when you went out on the reservation in the 40s with
I
Frank
can't
Bogart,
remember if we had any good luck or if we didn't. Now, I don't know. I do know
he would certainly know some of the people there. He would have known.
Yes, I would think he
Yes.
would have. I didn't know them, but they would probably have seen me and I would have seen them, and we just told them it was their duty. They should register to vote. That's all I know.
Good for you.
Tried
Good for
to.
you. Speaking of politics, do you remember Incorporation in 1938? Were you a part of that at all?
Of what?
When the city was incorporated?
Oh, I don't remember anything
Going to the
about it.
meetings
No.
or no? Oh, okay.
I do not remember that, and I don't know why I don't.
That's
I guess,
understandable.
was there a desert sun at that time?
Oh yes,
Well, I
Yes.
took the desert sun.
yes. Well, I thought since you were involved in politics that maybe you would have remembered how
No.
the Bennetts felt about it. Or
I bet you if
the
someone
Indians.
would mention what went on, I may have known it at
Well,
the time.
there were
but
meetings. Actually, they met, had open meetings about it at Francis Stevens School, whether to have the city be incorporated or not. And this was in '38.
I wish I'd have thought to ask Frank when it was, because I mean, what they
1938.
did
Oh.
do, a few things.
Okay.
I may.
Well, you were fairly new here. You had just moved in 2 years before, so you might not have
I
been
don't
involved.
think that I did.
We are moving up to the second phase of the interview, which I think is so interesting. You're working for the war effort in a sense at Attorney General. You have two stories. The first, how you became an ambulance driver.
Oh, I had a neighbor in the trailer village named Hazel, something or other, I can't remember. And she was a year older than I was, and went down to the El Mirador, the hospital.
Yes, it was Attorney General.
Yes, Attorney General then.
42.
And
yes.
she got a job and came back and told me, because I have told everyone I've got to go to work because they want you to be working. So she came back and said, I've got a job down at the hospital and Attorney General, and I start tomorrow. And I said, why, my land, that's where I want to go. And I went down and talked to them, and they said, I said, how old are you, Hazel? And she told me a year older than I was. And I said, they wouldn't take me. And she says, I don't understand that, because they did me. So I said, I'm going down again. And it hadn't been the regular person who had hired her. It was the man taking the place of the regular employment lady. So I went in and said that I had been turned down, and I would like to know what was the reason. And she said, her name was Hazel, I think, and she went to community church, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, she said our regular person wasn't here, but we can make a little deviation there. How much have you driven? And I said, well, I drive lots, and I've pulled trailers, little lightweight trailers that would sleep 4 people. Going into Yosemite, I think I can drive. And she said, all right, I believe we have a place for you. Would you know how to double clutch? And I said, well, she says, it'll be for ambulance driving. And I said, I don't know about double clutching, but I can sure learn it in a short time if anybody else can. So they sent, right then, she got the sergeant who was in charge of the motor pool, and I forget his, Sergeant Rush, and he took me out in an ambulance. They seemed rickety to me, but
I'm sure they were then.
Anyway, they had come from Patton's, I think, way down in the desert. And he said, now I'll tell you how you do it, and then you see if you can. And I seemed to have good luck with it. It was to make it shift more quietly, and I double clutched, and shifted, all right, and he said, we can use you. And I believe, I'm not sure, but I know I've been to Desert Center, and I think it was to take one of the ambulances down there to pick up a boy. I can't remember. See, I had nothing to do with them putting him in. I don't remember. I know I was there, and I don't know, but I know I took the ambulance and had one trip. And then the next day or so,
you talked about, we'll get into your real driving duties with the colonel.
I only drove the ambulance once.
Do you remember what Attorney General looked like? Was it pretty much...
Well, it was barracks.
There were no remnants of the old hotel. What about the flowers and the planting and all that? Was that...
It was pretty plain, as I remember it. All desert sand and lots of road... I saw road winders. What do you call
sidewinders?
Yes, at the motor pool.
Oh dear.
Yes, I was a little bit scared at times, but more people, the less they hang around. But then they got a call in the motor pool. I just can't tell you days what it was, but it was very soon.
Yes.
And oh no, the other driver, a gray-haired lady, had been driving for the colonel, but the colonel called and said,
"This is A.B. Jones, Colonel A.B. Jones."
Colonel A.B. Jones, and the girl had quit. I'm sure she quit before they hired me, but maybe she was fired. I don't know. But anyway, they got a call, and he said, "Sergeant, do you have?" I could hear it, or he repeated it like it was. "Do you have a gray-haired lady down there in the motor pool?" And I had white hair because my mother said that a couple of days after my husband died, suddenly overnight with double lobar pneumonia, I was white. And I don't remember that, but she said my hair was white. Well, anyway, they said, yes, we do have a lady, and the rest were all quite young, some girls and some soldiers. And so I was hired. I was hired for the colonel's driver. And he said, my driver that I have is always visiting with the boys, and of course I was a widow then, and not interested in the boys or anything, only to do them favors. I liked the soldiers, but I was never where he couldn't find me. I'd be waiting for him.
So he thought he was getting an old gray-haired lady.
Well, he got an old gray-haired lady, but I wasn't.
Yeah, silver-haired lady.
That's right. But he was a very nice guy to drive for. He never asked any special privileges, I mean, any favors at all of me. And he went to sleep. I think he was satisfied. He didn't ever compliment me, but his wife did. I told you that, didn't I?
Yes.
She really gave me a nice compliment.
You not only drove him, you were his official driver. And you did not just drive him around
the
area,
base.
but you went out of the you went out of Palm Springs.
Once a week he had to tour the grounds. And everyone that I later became better known with, better friends, people that I didn't know real well said, oh, I know, I met you. I mean, I saw you used to drive the colonel around the base. So everybody knew who it was. And he in the back seat in the right-hand corner, asleep when we'd go on long trips, always, because there was a guard on the, I couldn't drive fast. I'm known to be a little bit speedy driver. But
you weren't allowed,
a control.
An official car.
Yeah.
You had an interesting story of driving to Riverside?
Yes, oh sure, the March Air Force, we went quite often, and up to Mill Creek was a base. It wasn't a base. It was something to do with hospital. There was loads of boys at Mill Creek. I don't remember now, that's near Redmond somewhere.
Yes. What is your story about changing the license plates? Is that...
Oh, yes. If I not only drove for Colonel Jones, but I drove when officers of higher rank came, and I did get a little acquainted with the chief surgeon, chief surgeon of the whole works.
Yes.
I can't remember how that was, but it was Colonel Beaver. And I did get acquainted with him, and later found that I had a tumor, and it was not malignant, and went to the Beaver Clinic way later, but Beaver remembered me. He was a friendly, nice, but if I went once and needed a 5-star general, we went to San Bernardino, and every time you drive a higher rank, they had to change my license plate and put 1-star, 2-star,
exactly.
or 5-star.
Yes. So people know.
And I don't think I drove only 1 5-star. And I can't remember the details of that. I'm not sure. I think it was Eisenhower coming into San Bernardino because his wife wouldn't fly. But I can't remember that. I just know that when we went, it was very cold. We had to get there very early in the morning. I wore a scarf tied around my head, and when we got to the hotel, do you care about this?
Yes, I think
we got to the hotel in San Bernardino, still there. They wanted breakfast because we had time to eat, and I said, they both got out of the back seat.
This was
and then I said, I'll
a general
be back here waiting.
Possibly a general and his wife, maybe even Eisenhower, right?
Well, I know it was.
Oh, yes.
I mean, I know it was a general, yes. But I don't remember of them all being able to come back. I think he just met him more or less as, I think maybe somebody else met him. Anyway, they said, we're going in at breakfast and you just park the car and come back. And I said, oh no, Mrs. Jones, I won't be coming back because I just got up so early and I have this rag on my head and I don't want to. She said, my dear, anyone with your smile should get right in here and have breakfast with us, and we want you to, and now you park the car and come back, and I did.
That was lovely.
But she was unusually friendly, and he was very nice, but not put himself out.
Right, right. So she was, by and large, at his side a great deal of the time for all of these formalities.
I liked her real well.
One little item before we talk about you, then this is, in a sense, how you met your husband, your second husband. You talked about, you were driving the ambulance, you did talk about the sun on the emergency room. Is that how the emergency room entrance was fumigated by
yes, the way they fumigated the ambulances
rather
was as soon as they came in and you left your patient, they opened both back doors, and that was the fumigation. Leave it all day long in the hot sun.
Well, natural.
I do remember Colonel Jones telling me that he does not want to accept boys in this hospital that are coming back in May because they have not had enough time to get acclimated to the weather, and even though there was air conditioning and all, he preferred that the boys not be put in the hospital. I know he said something about that.
It's interesting.
We don't want to take any more than we have to, or we want them to be here and get acclimated to the heat a month or two ahead of time.
Interesting.
Get it gradually. I don't know what that was all about, but I know they fumigated the other way, opening the doors.
It was certainly an advantage of the natural sun. An advantage of the natural heat.
Yes, isn't that wonderful to think it would sterilize? Of course, maybe there was nothing terribly contagious, but
maybe they were just airing.
They were bad patients, and I know that the sergeant that came soon after I was there, Rush hired me, but very soon after, Johnny Critchlow came as the sergeant in charge of the motor pool, and he came back from South Pacific with malaria, and Sergeant Rush had to take his place and went to the South Pacific.
So this was your second husband, Johnny Critchlow, and he's
dead now.
Yes, was part of the motor pool in the 40s, and you married him in 43.
Yes, when he was 45.
In 1945.
When he was discharged.
Yes.
Then we were married in 45 in Glendale.
I see. Well,
California,
Hazel,
my mother's house. My mother and dad.
We have spoken for almost an hour, if you can believe it.
No.
Yes,
well,
it goes very quickly, and you've given us some wonderful, wonderful information, and I thank you. What I'm going to do now is, you have some great photographs. We'll show them, And we'll just be a few more minutes and we'll show you photographs and we'll talk about them. Okay, Hazel, do you want to describe, this is one of the houses that you bought on Callie Marcus?
Yes, that's right. It was called, Marcus Road, I think. I never said the Callie, but it was Callie Marcus, yes. Marcus Road, anyway.
And this was one of the three that eventually were moved off Indian land, is that correct? Okay.
You might be interested to know that Louise of Louise's Pantry was my next door neighbor right here on the corner.
Oh, yes.
Next to that house. That was Amado and Marcus.
What was she like? Can you describe
her? Louise is marvelous. She and Heine, her husband, used to own and operate way long ago the Louise's Pantry, the one that they stand in line.
Absolutely.
All the time. Every time I eat there, someone asks me how long I've been here, and they talk till you're crazy about Louise. But she sold to someone from San Francisco, but she had rented over on the corner right there, and then the man I told you took me up to the Tram lived in the next house back of Louise. That was Roy Smith, I think. He was the union head, but I don't know Roy. I knew his mother and he real well, but I'm so old I forget.
Oh, you're doing fine.
Anyway, across the street from this is my front house there on Marcus, and across the street was Richard McGill, Eileen's husband's mother lived, Rafina Regan. Well, I believe Regan.
She was an agua caliente as well.
Yes, I think so. I'm quite sure so, but it was Richard's mother anyway, and they were taking care of Eileen's oldest girl, who was Jeannie McGill Nelson now, and she's married and has 5 children and 4 girls and 1 boy, I think. I'm not sure, but they all went to school here. Of course, they went to St. Teresa, I believe, most of them. But anyway, one day when Jeannie was just a little tiny girl, she left the house and came over to visit me, and I was living in the little cottage home trailer over where the 3 houses were. And finally they found her and wondered where she'd been. She was visiting me, and I didn't know she was lost.
Do you want to show the next one, the clown picture? And I'm gonna let you put it in front of your blouse.
Now this is one of.
You want to put it down in front of your blouse a little bit? I think that would be.
Is that all right?
Down a little lower.
Are we on?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Lower.
Yeah. So that's even a little lower, Hazel.
A little bit
Yeah,
lower.
that's good.
All right.
And that is the clown is.
Well, we were always active, the Business and Professional Women's Club, in the Desert Circus. And we, one year, were the clowns. Everyone wore a clown outfit that could, or a lot of us did, and went up and down the street selling things to make money. I can't remember the details, but we did. And this was one of them with the little kids I was talking to.
Do you remember who those children were?
Oh, no. I don't think I knew them at all. I think they were just picked up.
Is that you and the clown?
What?
Is that you?
Oh, no. They were right by my house. I don't know who they are. I don't know who they are. And then, you want this other?
Yes. No, but I meant, do you know who was in the clown costume?
Oh, do I know where I got it?
No, who was that you and
me?
Right, that's what I thought. Right.
Yes, that was me.
That's great. And we'll see the third one.
And this one is a group of our BPWs when we gave our breakfast for the Mother's Day. On Mother's Day, we all got together, and it seemed like, is that low enough?
That's fine.
And this was at the Canyon Hotel, I am quite sure, when it was really new and lots of bare ground around there. And the people in this are right up in front is Aileen is the third one back, and the second one is her aunt, Aunt Flora Cruz, Siva's wife.
Very.
And I'm back, and then Aileen is the third one. And my mother is back here, but it was mother's, and of course Eileen's mother was long gone, and she takes Aunt Flora.
That's lovely.
with her. But we had them every year for quite a while.
Well, we will end on that note. Thank you again, Hazel.